I got my first paid customer for my development agency for a little over 11 grand when I think I was 17 at the time. Since then, I've understood a lot more about pricing and how to get customers. But for some context, I've had a lot of first customers. So really, that wasn't my first deal ever. It was just my first agency deal, but I had done stuff before. I could have gotten to that first deal at 5 figures way faster if I had understood what I know today about the development agency space and just development in general. So I thought I'd just walk through each one and kind of reflect on each first customer that I got, especially those like 3 different milestones. And then at the end, maybe share what I would do if I was kind of looking for one today. So what would I do to go after my first customers today? The first freelance contract I ever got, when I was 15, I joined this hackathon that was happening online. I had already been building stuff beforehand, but I had never tried React specifically, which is the tech that I now focus on. In that hackathon, bear in mind, I knew nobody there. So I was completely on my own. These are all people in their like late 20s, 30s, some even 40s. I felt completely out of my depth, but I just threw myself into it. I've very much held this motto of if you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, it's probably a good decision. And I identified that was the case in that scenario. And I think that's one of the best things that you can have early on, especially, is to be able to identify those situations where you have everything to gain. To be honest, I felt pretty overwhelmed. I was like terribly unqualified, but people asked me what I did. And I basically said, oh, I guess I do some development and I'm trying to learn React. At the time, I had never made a proper React project. I threw myself into the hackathon. I did it. I found this team. I worked with them. I had never developed a project with anyone else. So I just did as much as I could. I was scrambling, reading the React documentation, learning on the go, but I just did a good job. And then they basically said, oh, hey, you're actually pretty good. We're working on this freelance thing for this, some client, and they could use some extra help. And they offered to pay me like $1,200. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Are you kidding me? I've never seen that much money in my life. Anyway, I was super excited about that. I jumped on that. I did a good job. And honestly, I didn't even know this at the time, but I was working incredibly fast. I had no idea because I didn't know how fast they were working. So I was just doing whatever I could. And there was one time I had this conversation. They were like, dude, you work really fast. And I was like, no, I had zero idea. Eventually, their projects kind of dried up and I was in school. So I started focusing on other stuff. But it was the first time people actually paid me to do development and the first time I actually worked with other people. And it was a really, really valuable experience. Engineering with other more senior engineers is one of the best ways to learn. Absolutely. Hands down. The first agency customer that I got was the kind of sweat equity deal, the one that I mentioned that it didn't end up in anything. And I actually met this guy at an event and we spoke. He mentioned he needed work, but he didn't have budget and all these things. And he basically talked to me into how his project was going to be big. And I was naive and gullible, and too often I give the benefit of the doubt to people, and I just went with it, and I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe in and buy in, and I spent a couple months working on that to absolutely zero avail. At first, I saw the project wasn't going anywhere, and I thought, oh, this is a waste of time. What I didn't realize, however, was that experience would then be valuable to pitch future customers. And so when I was then approached by that opportunity for my first paid project pitch, I said we had built this stuff before, and I also talked about my previous experiences just having built other projects beforehand. That first proper paid deal I actually found through a guy I met on Twitter. At the time, I was very active on Twitter and I was like really kind of involved in the blockchain space, and I was just talking to a lot of people. And then I ended up having this conversation with this guy. At the time, I was in Singapore, and so we met up. I just told him what I was doing, what I was working on, and he mentioned, oh, I have a friend of mine who's looking for a developer right now. We linked up, had a chat, and we got along, built some trust. I think I actually pitched him on 13 grand and we negotiated to 11. I was super happy and we walked away at that. The project was a couple months long and it was really good fun, honestly. It was a great experience kind of being able to work with a proper client for the first time, and we went out a couple times and had all kinds of meetings. You might think it's complete madness because I was at a hackathon, then people asked me, okay, I got lucky. Then I was at the event, I found this guy who needed dev work, I kind of got lucky. The thing is though, each of those times, I only got lucky because I was in the right place at the right time. You can maximize your chance of that by just putting yourself in more events and more communities around more people, because at the end of the day, if you know more people, it's more likely that something will fall in your lap. It's like there's an apple tree and it's full of apples. You can't reach any of them, right? But if you shake the tree, more apples will fall. If you don't shake the tree at all, it'll be really slow until the next apple falls. And this idea that you can maximize your luck, I think, is incredibly valuable to understand. You might feel, oh, but that doesn't give me a way to get my customer immediately in the next week. But you can't be betting on that, because if you only want fast results, you're always going to be caught up in the do things fast kind of scheme. And that is never going to get things done properly, especially in the long term. If I was starting from complete zero, I would just focus on going to events and meeting people in the space that I want to get a client in and making friends in that space, not trying to pitch people. Never try to pitch people up front because they don't like that. Just make friends and be valuable to them. I recorded a video about this, I think last week, and I think it's titled something along the lines of how to network from scratch or something. You can go check that out. That is what I would do if I was starting out and I knew what I know now. Just build relationships. That is absolutely where you get the most deals from, especially in the start when you don't have kind of case studies and testimonials. If you start there, you can build a really strong foundation. As long as you let people know you are looking for deals and are looking for more development work, eventually something will fall in your lap. Let me know if any freelancers have cool stories about how they got their first customers, or if anybody has any questions. I mean, I'd be happy to help. Let me know how you found your first customers, or if you need any help or have any questions, I'd love to help.